Hey, Ryan, we have some pretty exciting news, I think. Construction Disruption now has our first ever paid sponsor. There's this company that approached us about getting in front of our audience, and we're so pleased to have them now as a sponsor.
That's right, Todd. That company is TrueLook, and what they offer is pretty awesome. They've made it incredibly easy to view, secure, and document job sites with their construction cameras.
A lot of times I think we think of construction cameras as, just being there for security. But with TrueLook, they also have features like custom time-lapse videos and remote live viewing.
Yeah, a term we throw around a lot here on construction disruption is game changing, and TrueLook certainly falls into that category. Being able to document your progress on job sites and then go back and show your clients that high quality in progress video is certainly something that I would call game changing.
I absolutely agree. And at TrueLook, they also have unlimited users, free forever media storage, 24/7 support, no contract service plans, lifetime equipment warranties, and no limits on 4G LTE data transmission.
And they integrate seamlessly with project management tools like Procore and Autodesk.
I don't think anyone makes construction cameras as hassle-free or feature-rich as TrueLook. Anyone can go and schedule a free, no-obligation quote at truelook.com. That's truelook.com.
Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of design, building, and remodeling.
I'm Todd Miller of Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. Today, my co-host is Ethan Young. Ethan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good today, Todd. Definitely.
Good.
Happy that it's Friday, but doing good. How about you?
I'm looking forward to the show, actually. This is one that we booked a couple weeks ago, and I've been looking forward to it ever since because we just got some cool stuff we're going to be talking about, looking out ahead into design and construction. But I did have something I wanted to share first, and this was, sometimes we have jokes. I'm sorry, I don't have a joke to share today. Maybe I am the joke. I don't know. But this is a quote that I read. It's attributed to Warren Buffett. You see these quotes on the internet, and who knows if this is really who originally said this, but I still think it's a pretty cool quote to live by. So let me read this real quick. You will continue to suffer if you have an emotional reaction to everything that is said to you. True power is sitting back and observing things with logic. True power is restraint. If words control you, that means everyone else can control you. Breathe and allow things to pass. I love that. I think that's a good reminder for all of us to kind of approach life and just have that sort of what was the word you used? Stoicism.
Yeah, we talked kind of a stoic attitude about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. So good advice, I think. Well, let's go on into the show today. So it's kind of interesting when we first developed construction disruption, and hard to believe, Ethan, it's been nearly 2 years already since we started the show. But when we first started, our goal was really to, what we call uncover the future of design and building and remodeling. And I think we've lived into that well. Over the years, we've looked at industry disruptors, and we've also looked at a number of individuals and companies who are trying hard to live into the future and also to shape the future of our great industry. Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to focus a little bit more on what I call the intangible. We're going to dream and scheme a bit on where our industry may be going and really what it's going to take to get us there. To help us to that end today, we have Alex Walzer. Alex is from Zurich, Switzerland, and he is a doctoral researcher with ETH Zurich, which is the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. He is studying and working on construction entrepreneurship with a focus on digital fabrication and also on robotics in construction. Alex has broad experience in architecture and engineering, and he really just has this fascination with where our industry may be going and how it's going to get there. So, Alex, what a pleasure to have you today as a guest on Construction Disruption. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, folks. The pleasure is mine. And in general, I would say I'm very happy to connect with you and talk about such timely topics, maybe pointing towards the future, maybe pointing towards just tomorrow. And also congratulations actually on your podcast, and the website looks really great.
And I did want to mention before we get into the rest of the interview, we are doing our challenge words this episode. So yeah, keep an ear out, see if you notice any kind of interesting or unique words coming from us, and we'll let you know at the end of the episode. But anyways.
Thank you, Ethan. I so often forget to say that. I appreciate you throwing that in there. So our challenge words are just these words we challenge each other to work into the conversation. So we encourage our audience to listen to that. So Alex, let's jump into things. I want to start with sort of an overview question. I'm just kind of curious, what is it about construction that fascinates you and makes you want to be a part of that journey into the future of construction?
It's a great question. So it will be more anecdotal now, this part, but I'm trained as an architect. And I guess soon throughout this education, I realized I'm actually more interested in the process of constructing or construction, because I think it's actually quite beautiful to learn and see how basically our built environment is planned and built around us, and also how it regenerates as we construct new stuff. That being said, I think there are also big challenges faced today, and maybe or not, some of today's problems actually come from yesterday's solutions. So in general, as a curious mind, I'm rethinking it, just wondering basically, and I must, in that sense, believe that tomorrow needs to be different from today.
Very interesting. Well, and your history is kind of interesting to me, because we had another architect on the show once who, he was trained as an architect and he just loved construction. I mean, he wanted to be the guy picking up the hammer. And so he kind of got into sort of a design build thing. But one of the things he told us was that original architects were also builders. They weren't just the ones sitting around designing. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. So as you look at the construction industry, Alex, what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities, for growth or, change or challenges that the industry is going to continue to face?
So if you ask me maybe a few years back when I was younger, I'd probably have started answering this with some solutions, right? With robotics and automation, maybe something fancy around computation, 3D design or something. But the problem is does not sit there, right? So I think that it's pretty easy to forget that we are currently in a transition period of our industry. It is a very rough industry to actually work in today, mostly always has been. Very stressful for most, and also for some actually very heavy on their bodies, right? So I would say that these are some problems we actually have to face. And if it was possible in an ideal scenario, we could make this kind of everyday life for every stakeholder in the construction value chain and adjacent industries much better, right? And this is a big challenge. But yeah, I think in short, what I see is that there is a construction industry changing as we speak, very slowly though. And there are many loose ends we have to tie up here. That being said, also, I think the bottlenecks are social processes and people, and not necessarily technological ones. So we cannot move the problems basically by just hiding them, right? We need to solve them. So I would say, let's discuss what the symptoms we have, right? And then let's discuss what the root causes are and how we can change them and how we can kind of solve the pain of the industry there, and not start with the solutions up front. I guess this is something I see often in my field in research.
That's very interesting. So, if some of the problems or challenges we're facing are more social processes, people, those types of things, I mean, it kind of sounds like any, ongoing change that we do have in the industry probably isn't going to be, like quantum leaps real fast. I mean, things that are usually driven by technology, it probably will be more slow and gradual and more through adoption. Is that kind of what you think also?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, of course, I wish that in inner part of myself wishes for disruption, right? And wishes for things to destroy. And I think your podcast has a very fitting title here, but it is maybe not as disruptive as we would wish for, because it's a social process, it's a social experiment, and so technological change and innovation takes time to just materialize. I think also so far, if you look at the innovations in construction, they have been very incremental so far. Yet maybe, thinking of like regulations and the discussion more recently about embodied and emitted carbon, I think this actually might change a bit the way that existing companies are competing, making revenue, might in turn maybe lead to new materials and processes throughout this transformation. So it is really a little bit like a carrots and sticks approach, and that being said, this is a very big industry. It plays in different markets, very decentralized, very networked. So it's also for me a bit difficult to, for example, compare the US environment to the European one, to Asia Pacific, Global South, right? There are different markets out there. Different markets require different solutions. They have different problems sometimes. And I think we just have to, in parallel, test many ideas at the same time. And it's a great time right now to probably do that. Just also maybe want to add up. So yes, maybe it is less of a quantum leap, disruptive kind of transformation that will happen as we speak, but we also should not underestimate second order effects, right? So think about how, for example, the hardware of a smartphone enables us to actually develop apps and platforms and marketplaces, right? So you can say that maybe without smartphones, we wouldn't have ride-sharing platforms or dating apps, whatnot, right? All these kind of players, they require this hardware in the first place. And so this is, I think, quite interesting. Maybe not something we had in mind when we were having these early Nokia phones. And I guess the point I want to make here is that maybe hardware enables new ecosystem building eventually. If you then consider not the smartphone manufacturing world and consumer electronics, but the construction industry, we are pretty much in the same place we've been 100 years ago. Maybe we have better windows now, but they're still the same archetype of product. And also maybe to give you an example from the automotive space, I always like to think in other industries, right? What kind of transformation have they undergone? And if you think of automotive space, maybe around, let's say 50 years ago, aerodynamics also did not really matter that much, right? Or pedestrian safety did not play a big role, right? So that's the cars back then, they had a different radius, right? Because maybe of manufacturability, not of outside external factors. So that's quite important. I think this is a shift for sure. And as you can see today, leading car manufacturers in the world are leading in those fields, in aerodynamics and passenger safety. So putting regulations and just values in society up front might actually condense the good innovation to move forward, right? And we're all part of this big experiment. So we will see eventually, and it's easier in hindsight than forecasting how we will move ahead in our industry.
Very interesting. Well, when you think about the challenges that are going to drive change in the construction industry, are most of those challenges you think have to do with some of the things we think about, energy, carbon footprint, or do you think there are other big challenges on the horizon that are going to be the drivers of change also in construction going forward?
Yeah, so I feel like to think of this kind of carbon discussion and material discussion like as if we think of food, right? These are the calories. So we need to know how much we should consume, what is healthy and what is not. What's the ideal breakfast? It's a stupid comparison, but we need to know what's in this building, what does it represent, what energy went into it, and maybe how can I sell it again in a circular economy environment. However, I think also moving forward, big challenges are that actually our infrastructure that we've built over the past decades is falling apart. Plus the pressure of declining available workforce, or let's put it in other words. Maybe this is interesting for your listeners. I'm not sure if we have a declining workforce, but there's a declining number of people willing to work for the salaries this industry pays. Maybe that's a different perspective to look at it. But anyway, we need more people, probably higher salaries, new technologies in this environment as well. And by by adding new technologies, maybe we can reskill existing workforce or attract also like a new supplementary workforce as well. It is, as I said before, right, like a very unpleasant work environment. Not many people like really want to work in it. We are actually in here. I don't know why, but it is interesting, but it's still unpleasant, right? So it has to do with unrealistic deadlines, I would say, ad hoc like workflows, a lot of waste in general as well, like both in terms of labor and also materials. And by doing this, we're not generating a really high performance, high quality environment for high performance, high quality products. Rather the opposite, right? It's a race to the bottom sometimes, and nobody in the manufacturing industry, for example, would behave or do projects the way we do it, right? So maybe we are missing a little bit of like management skills and education to actually work through these big complex projects. And maybe in general, I would say I'm also like a big fan of moving away from projects to products, because I don't quite know, even as an architect, like why 99% of the buildings actually need to be unique and designed from scratch. Like why can't we just use the same plans again and industrialize the way we build as well? That in turn might also help reducing housing prices. But now I opened up a lot of cans of worms. But I think it's all connected in a way. And let's move away from how we've done it in the past to something maybe a bit nicer and more environmentally friendly moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's all interesting. And one of the things I thought of when you said that, why does 90% have to be unique? Kind of funny. My wife and I live in a home that was built as a custom home about 50 years ago. But this was a home design that was out there and lots of folks were building. So it's cool. I may be in some place completely different in the country and see my house. So I would say, that's kind of cool. But so speaking about products, I know that one of the things that you study is what's called digital fabrication. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand that, that's kind of basically where data is used to drive the design of equipment to make new products. Is that kind of a loose, good, decent understanding of that?
Yeah, it's a nice description. I think it's one of the better ones I've heard so far. It's also cool you looked it up. So thanks for doing the background research. Maybe for some of your listeners, some folks out there familiar with kind of workflows relating, usually called CAD/CAM, computer-aided design and manufacturing, where basically you have a component where you design stuff on the computer, right, as you use building information modeling, but then also something that is related to the manufacturing, the production process, and they're actually linked. So the beauty of that would be that you can actually make fabrication data available to the design process upstream, opening new kind of avenues to streamline these kind of processes from design to production, right? That also means technically, as you again said before, like back in the days, architects were also the builders. And in this case, in this kind of narrative of digital fabrication, we can see a world where the separation of planner and engineers and fabricator is a bit blurred, right? They become the same person. Maybe they become this medieval master builder again. That would be one possible future. So just imagine having a shop downstairs where you can just, you draw some stuff, you run it through the machines or some simulation or so nowadays, and you can realize how much it costs, how long it takes you, what kind of inventory you need to have, and so on. But it's a bit more disruptive approach, I would say, and maybe because of that, not too many companies today actually take advantage of this because it has to be absorbed by the industry as well. Digital fabrication, from our understanding, also can lead to a new product architecture, as in a sense, new processes usually also inform new products and vice versa. And maybe one good example for the listener, the name is a bit obvious, but it's called the DFAB House in Switzerland, Digital Fabrication House. We can maybe then put the link or so in the description later. It is a full-scale research demonstrator, it is called, kind of a joint venture between university academic research and some curious and ambitious industry partners. That was built around maybe 5 years ago. It's still standing, still around. Quite cool. It combines elements of 3D printing, robotics, prefabrication. It is, of course, a connected smart home now as well. But it's interesting to see these kind of components come together where everything is actually digitally fabricated, not just a particular element like a column or something, right? So that could be quite interesting maybe for some to see.
Very cool. DFAB House. So there's a website for it, I assume, or something, right?
Exactly. dfabhouse.ch.
Very good. So another area I know where you study, Alex, is robotics in construction. Would it make sense to you that as robotics are used more in construction, it's going to be more through off-site construction, in factories and so forth, rather than individual job site construction? Or do you see a little bit of both happening? Or how do you see robotics coming into play?
Yeah, it's a good point again, right? So it's also for me sometimes very difficult in my little brain to draw the line between like the way how I think about, or we think about robotics and the way we think about digital fabrication. It is somewhat interlinked, right? It comes together.
Sure.
But so robotics also comes with software and firmware and all these kind of things, right? They need to be integrated in a production system. So this tends to go towards automation and so on. But I would think yes. So both will happen, right? They will materialize probably differently. I guess that offsite prefab allows just for higher throughput, and thereby enables maybe to achieve economies of scale faster, which then also in turn justifies higher capital expenditures of such a facility in the first place. But then eventually you get into inventory bottlenecks, right? So you may want to look for methodologies, as you can find in the Toyota production system from the automotive industry, very old, right? Where you produce basically and keep a small inventory and produce parts just in time. Then in contrast, on the job side, I think we're more talking about collaborative environments because we have smaller batch sizes, and it's going to be very similar, I think, to using cranes and tools nowadays, just maybe more sophisticated and more smarter tools, right, that can assist the professionals on the job side. And in this regard, we see a lot of development, actually more recently, in terms of drones, other kind of types of robots. And in our kind of research at university, we also try a little bit to understand how professionals eventually perceive these machines, right? And maybe try to understand if they if we can increase acceptance and adoption rate by testing different designs of those machines, or at least understand which kind of design is the most hated one to avoid that, right? Because if the users don't like it, they will not use it. So that's a bummer then. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people already working on this, and both are viable options today already, and it might actually move quite fast. So if you think of self-driving cars, they were science fiction, right? Until like some companies introduced kind of self-driving cars almost 10 years ago already, or semi-self-driving. Enabled by electrification of that industry and that kind of product. So it's also kind of smart from a business perspective if you think of construction robotics, because as you can basically book a one-time sale, or you do like a robot as a service lease model or something, you can also generate recurring revenue through subscription models, right? So you have maybe like a remote mode and autonomous mode, and you have to anyway pay monthly for that or so. So, and then you can airdrop updates to the machines or something like this. This might happen. So it's quite interesting, I think, because we're just at the cusp of this taking place. So it still sounds crazy. When we meet in 5 years, we will see more of those machines, I guess, on the job side.
That actually made me think of a couple of things. One, it just put the picture in my head of like going down to the local rental place for like a forklift or whatever yard tool you need. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, Todd. And just having a robot
Sure.
there. I think that's actually kind of an interesting idea. And then the other point is, you published an article back in January. You and some others published an article back in January about perceptions of different robotic designs and how those affect, I think where it was interesting for me too was I read through the abstract, but do you think there'd be a difference in how people would perceive them based on, or how like the most effective way we could design them, comparing them for a job site or an offsite? Do you think there's a difference there?
First of all, thank you for reading our papers. I'm happy somebody does. And I would say yes. So there are some functional requirements, of course, right?
Mhm.
There's a product architecture that, or a certain requirement this machine needs to fulfill. And that depends a bit on the work task and the scenario, how they interact with the humans or not. That will change. These machines are modular as well, so you could change components on them. You could make up a new robot as you wish, maybe like as a platform, as a modular system. And then I think, let's say, once we have found a good robot that we are, or the drywall people are happy to work with, then I think it's not about the design in the sense of physical embodiment and materialization of that particular machine, but it's also about how this machine moves and talks and behaves. Like in your car, you can probably press a button and it has a preset for your seat and maybe the temperature you like and whatnot, right? And your radio station that is your favorite. Future construction machines might also have maybe you have a personal key or something to log in, to check for credentials, for training, etc. But then also to give you like a certain profile that you need, right? So maybe I'm weak in my left arm, so the robot needs to compensate for this weakness. That could be one individualized scenario I could imagine moving forward. Yeah.
So as we think about robotics and construction, I mean, one of the thoughts I think of is 3D printing of buildings, but certainly what we're talking about here goes beyond that as well. But 3D printed buildings obviously have a different look to them. You think that the look and the way we design the aesthetics of buildings is going to have to change to accommodate more of this technology?
Look, architects will say 3D printing, the aesthetics of 3D printing is a feature, not a bug. So it depends, I guess. Maybe like in the future, not so far, you will order your building in a configurator that is probably some AI-driven engine, and you will just select, do you want this surface to look 3D printed or just not? And that's it. Like as you order a car and you just select the color of your interior or the surfaces, right? It's that simple. But what you said is interesting. So if we zoom out, will the machines that produce a building affect how the building looks? Probably, yes. So there are some constraints with 3D printing in terms of just gravity and details like this, and just the process it works, right? And then there's differences whether you do this offsite or on the job site, whether you move components, you can flip them, or you print them as they should stand there. It depends, right? It depends also then again how this is all being assembled or disassembled. If you have this thinking of a circularity in here, I think personally though that the robot is just means to produce the building, right? So it is more important to actually think about the psyche and emotions of the human user more than the technical capabilities of that particular machine that produces that particular structure once, in a lifetime, in like 1/100th of the lifespan, 1% of the time of that element. But I get the point, of course. So maybe here I would say, like, going back to another industry, like smartphones, they have some ergonomics that are important, right? As we use these kind of phones. And this will then inform the product design, which kind of, in a way, has to work out with the production means that are available, right? So, for example, I don't know if, for example, in construction context, if a nail, just like like not a screw but a nail, informs the design of the hammer, or vice versa, right? It's a causality dilemma. I don't know. It's a chicken egg thing. So you cannot have one without the other. So I don't know. It is one of those kind of situations where we have to think through, and it might just change a little bit the entire system architecture. So maybe both have to change eventually. They have to get closer to each other, or some new technique comes out there and we don't print, but we spray or throw or something, the concrete, maybe. That's that. But in general, also I have some other thoughts on 3D printing. It has been a very more recent trend in the industry. And I'm also personally actually very interested in this and agnostic to industries and application. But when I think about it a bit more, it is still cement, right? Still concrete. It doesn't really solve the main problem about environmental impact and so on. So there will be issues here, I think, moving forward of increasing the market size here too much. And it is also at this point, I think, still a somewhat unclear cost-benefit curve that we need to understand better. Critical voices might say that it is a solution looking for a problem. And since in my doctoral research I study entrepreneurship in the construction industry, like this is the main application today where we see entrepreneurial activities and startups emerging, right? And we will see what type of innovation here will basically succeed, right? There's some kind of startups in the US that have raised north of $500 million, I think, US. So people believe in it, and it's kind of coming together. Technological barriers are being basically overcome. But I think maybe we should put these elements underground in general and do some timber stuff for the construction above ground.
I thought that was really interesting where, you have this focus on entrepreneurship in construction. And, when I think of entrepreneurship, I think of more sort of the individual bootstrapping and doing something unique. But really, you're kind of looking at bigger picture there that, it's going to take these folks who do want to develop organizations, whether that's already scaled or to be scaled later, that want to develop these things to push things forward. Do you see that? It sounds like you see that as one of the driving factors that's going to be required to make these changes in terms of social processes and people and so forth that drives us ahead. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's certainly like my focus would be more on this kind of technology entrepreneurship, right? Like pushing this forward, but it is very difficult. Look, it's still like companies are just basically, it's a group of people coming together for a particular moment in time, trying to solve a particular problem at a profit. And there's many stakeholders involved, right? And 3D printing, for example, because we just mentioned it, it's also very unclear from the regulation and standard perspective. Is this gonna be? Does it suffice? Does it fit to existing frameworks? Do we need new frameworks? Probably both is true, right? So it's an added challenge, and this is very interesting to study because the entrepreneurs that are so driven today are trying to overcome this challenge despite all the uncertainty. And this is highly interesting to study, and hopefully it will work out because we need those kind of experiments in our construction industry. Otherwise, we just fall back to how we've done the things, right, for the past 200 years, I guess.
Sure. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit. I'd like to talk a little bit about solar and even specifically building integrated solar. As you kind of look into your crystal ball, is there anything you see happening that's in that area that's going to continue to allow buildings to produce their own energy or be zero energy, however you want to look at it?
Yeah, I think it's a great example of technology that is in the built environment, but does not really necessarily too much affect the construction process, meaning it is highly possible to retrofit existing structures with those kind of technologies, which is great. And yes, I mean, look, our grid sometimes in some locations is plagued by blackouts, and I think we have to make it more resilient. So one way to do it is basically through decentralized energy generation and also storage in that sense. And maybe it's also a combination of basically these kind of building integrated photovoltaic systems, maybe some kind of type of wind, other energy sources, I don't know, geothermal, heat pumps, all these things all together to increase actually resilience. And I also like the idea because I think it is a more recent discussion that to some degree puts back agency to building owners and operators away from utility companies. So there's a sort of a bit of like a freedom movement in there as well, which is, I think, quite nice to see. And in the future, yes, I think that there might be a possible future where every building, every structure can generate, store, and maybe trade its own energy. So this is also pretty cool in terms of like resource pooling and maybe lowering the price of this kind of commodities in a sense.
Yeah, I think you made an interesting point there too, just it's almost about adding that capability back to people so that, like you said, if the grid goes down, they still have the ability to, they can still be lighting their homes. They can still be, if they have an electric car, they can power their car, appliances, internet, whatever it is for in that case. But it's like you said, it's kind of putting a little bit of that power back in the hands of the individual.
Exactly. When I was living in the US last year, we had a few power outs, and one of my housemates had an electric car, and we just basically we hooked up. We had like a huge fridge, and we hooked up that fridge to the electric car for a few days. It's insane. But that's like this kind of empowerment that you get, because you get all of a sudden very creative. It's like our neighbors don't have electric cars, so our fridge is the one on the street. That's vibes.
Well, as we talk about this looking forward, I mean, one of the things we think a lot of our audience members are folks who are fairly early in their careers in design and building and remodeling. You're still a young guy, and you're building this amazing career in a great industry. Do you have any specific career advice for other young folks who are getting involved in this business?
Yeah, so I'm not as young as you might think, but thank you. New ideas keep me young, right? It's just a mental mode, but I have this body to use, right? So that's it. And I would say that maybe one advice I would like to give also my younger self, if I was in the same position again, is basically to start connect with your peers and just talk to people in the industry, right? Don't assume that your current superior, that is only there anyway for a certain amount of time, probably a project, maybe for this one employment, whatnot. They are not your single point of truth. So network, move across the firm boundary, knock some walls down ourselves. I think the industry could really benefit from more transparency. And, you will also then receive transparent feedback as well. And from there on, you can actually build trust. You can make teams operate more efficiently. And maybe this also has to do actually, in fact, with de-risking innovation as well, right? It is a methodology called open innovation. And basically, if you're able and willing to share comfortably ideas, no matter actually at which stage, they can be stupid. It's fine, right? But I really live along those kind of in my personal life, and it gets me sometimes also in trouble, I'll tell you that. But I live along those lines of open innovation, and I can recommend it. I would say that in general, you can learn something from anybody. Don't let your ego or predisposition be in the way, right? So imagine, already anyway what you have in your mind and the values you stand for. Plus, imagine you can also learn 20% of everybody around you. We would be unstoppable, right? So this is the kind of industry I think we need moving forward. So speak up, connect with other folks, try a startup. You have to be only right once, right? That's it.
I love that. And I remember earlier you spoke that you tend to look outside the construction industry for ideas and inspiration. And I had seen you being interviewed someplace, and you said, I really don't read construction books. I tend to read other industries. And you mentioned earlier automotive or vehicles. Are there other industries that you think in particular folks ought to be paying attention to or looking to for inspiration and ideas?
Yeah, we live in a time of aliens now. So I'm not sure when this podcast will come out, but we just discovered that kind of stuff. So I think that space exploration is also highly interesting. Like, this is pioneering work, right? People build new technologies to go to places where nobody has been before. And very costly, high risk, maybe a bit too much, but aerospace engineering, super interesting. And okay, so some simpler examples maybe here, right? Easier analogies. I think I would also like to think a bit of more like construction as a physical activity where like lots of professionals, millions of them in fact, every day burn calories on the job site. So maybe there's a way to, think of some more healthy practices for physical health, also mental health, of course. But also maybe think more about our construction professionals actually as athletes, and cheer them up, and I don't know, build teams, where they can be more productive, more efficient. They don't have, I don't know why that is the situation that it currently is in the industry. It could be so much better. So then I think about nutrition, food and cooking, because in the end, workers, professionals out there together are cooking or baking a house, if you will, right? They're mixing ingredients, they put it in a formwork. It's just a massive cake. So could be nice, could be healthy too.
Well, I love that. And I know that you talk some about, gamifying things. So that kind of plays in with that also. How can we make something fun, something healthy out of work? It's a great concept.
Might as well, right? It's almost for free to be in a good mood and to do it healthy and do it smart and do it properly. So thanks for doing all the background research, guys. It's really good stuff. So we can build upon. Gamification is, I think, the key to unlock a lot of things in construction as well as in other industries, of course. And then I can see the confluence of some sort of gamification with robotics, where it becomes like a video game or something, where like you receive some tokens or you are like the most productive in the field. So everybody knows your credentials because you have this particular status or soundtrack on your machine. I don't know, whatever it could be, right? It's maybe too simplified and people don't agree, but something is there that I think we could integrate in the construction industry. And robots have been out there in other geographical regions, like, for example, Japan in the 80s as well. They disappeared because I think more macro factors and stuff, kind of labor got cheaper again. So maybe something around this, right? However, if you wanted to see interesting construction sites, which I like to see them, go to Japan. They're amazing. They're very clean. They're completely wrapped up. No dust leaves the construction site. They will spray water the trucks before leaving, so they don't affect the neighbors, right? They will have a screen there measuring and displaying the sound levels, the decibel of the construction site. I think it's very nice. It's one step further, like into the future. And it's their past already. So some kind of gamification with some robotics in a nice environment is how I think we could be more productive and create generally a nicer, better, more fun environment, and maybe eventually build better products. Might even increase your margin. I don't know, but race to the bottom has not worked out so far with a 3% pre-tax profit margin. That's not enough. What the hell?
Good point. We're blessed. We sell a decent amount of our roofing materials in Japan. And one of the things, that always strikes me is their roofing installers wear white gloves. I can assure you there are not too many roofing installers here in the States wearing white gloves.
They should wear suits and, kind of athletic outfit.
Yeah,
because they're doing physical work,
Absolutely. I agree. Well, someone like you who spends so much time thinking about the future of, focusing on this industry, I have to imagine that you have had some pretty out there ideas that you've come to you over the years. I'm just curious, is there anything that you'd want to share with us as far as a real wildest dream idea or something you've played with in your mind about construction?
Yeah, so I really think this kind of gamification approach, it's more like an approach methodology, right, than a product or so. I think that could really work well. I can also share a bit with you. I have one crazy idea. It was actually my undergrad thesis I did with two friends and a nice set of very supportive supervisors. We were trying to propose to use the solar energy and bundle the light basically with a large lens to melt desert sand, right? And we would mount this kind of mirrors on swarm of drones, and they would solidify layers of desert sand. And just recently, last week, I came across a scientific research paper that finally actually tells us that this really can be done. We did small-scale tests, but we were young students with limited resources. And they actually gave us like some good indication of what can be done. So if anyone out there wants to solar sinter desert sand, imagine this is abundant material that today cannot really be used for cement because of the aggregate texture or something, size, geometry of that. That does not need external energy as well. That could be quite interesting. So in short, 3D printing with desert sand using solar light to crystallize and melt, to glassify basically the sand. That would be quite crazy too.
Goodness, remember everyone, you may have heard it here first. I love this. Great,
Hit me up.
great.
We'll build it.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Alex. This has been fascinating. We're going to have you back sometime. I know there's a lot more we can talk about, but we are kind of close to wrapping up what we call the business end of things. Is there anything we haven't covered today that you'd like to share with our audience?
So maybe depending on your audience, right? So maybe one thing we could talk about just briefly is investments in our space. This is something I also tend to spend quite some thinking time on it. And I would say just for investors and partners and, people willing to do joint ventures and so on, I would say that there's a great opportunity to invest in hardware ventures today and hardware solutions like new materials, robotics, and so on. Because what many people are blinded by returns of software investments, right? And there has been crazy examples in our industry already, exits and acquisitions and so on. Less so in the hardware domain. However, people tend to underestimate that once you have developed a hardware product, you can sell it forever. You have to only develop it once. Even if the capital expenditures are higher, you can just keep selling it for decades if you're smart and you have good IP protection. So the return could be very high. I think there should be more investments into this domain. But I'm biased, right? So that's just my personal recommendation. And I think that's it. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's very interesting advice. So I love it. So before we close out, though, we're not going to let you get away too quick here. We have to ask if you're willing to participate in something we call our rapid fire questions. So these are 7 questions that we ask our guests. We kind of switch them up, ask different questions of different guests. All you got to do is give us a quick answer or long answer, whatever you like, to each question. So are you up to the challenge of rapid fire?
Let's go. I'll get in trouble.
It's harmless. Well, we'll alternate asking. Ethan, you want to ask the first question?
Yeah, I can do that. All right. Question 1. Can you think of a product that you've bought recently that's been a disruptor or a game changer for you?
I'm biased because I'm looking at my table. I would say smartwatches.
Okay.
Okay.
Changes everything. Phones are disappearing, guys. Quote me on that. I mean, quote anybody, not this first person to have this idea, but phones are disappearing, smartwatches. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. Sorry, long thought. Gamification, construction, smartwatch. You can build, I haven't seen a construction app being built on a smartwatch. What the hell? Costs like a few $100 and you can deploy this to millions of people.
Very cool. I remember the first time I took a call on my watch in front of my mom and she's like, "What are you doing?" Okay, question number 2. What would you like to most be remembered for?
I think giving back, ideally. I would like to be remembered for somebody who gives back. I'm a trained paramedic, so I've done my few hundred missions already, but that's how I also think of in the work I do, that I'm basically helping. However, now I wouldn't like to be remembered as the one that helps when it's too late, as paramedics sometimes do, but one that actually helps earlier in the process as a nutritionist or something, if you will, right, for construction or any other processes.
Interesting.
Very good.
All right, next one. So looking back when you were younger, what was the silliest thing that you were afraid of?
I was the kid that always thought there was a monster under the bed, I confess. But
I think as a child, I really hated... So there's this kind of washing streets for cars, And I think I somehow thought that this thing would eat the car or something.
Yeah. Car wash, yeah.
I hated it.
That's funny.
Next question. What is the first thing you think about when you get up in the morning?
I like to think about progress in a way that I want to be less wrong every day. And the first thing when I wake up, I'm like, damn, okay, look, we're doing this again. what am I going to try to be less wrong about today. That's how I learn, basically.
Wow, good stuff.
Would you rather have to sing along with every song that you hear or dance along with every song that you hear?
I think both is bad, but dancing could be more fun.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
For me.
And you're burning, gamification, you're burning calories. And
Yeah.
Exactly.
Next question. You're trying to survive a zombie apocalypse. What one person do you want to make sure is on your team?
Damn, I love video games, as you know, and I love zombie movies. So what I need on my team is, I think, another MacGyver, similar to my skills, but a bit supplementary, that can really source good materials and just create some kind of mechanisms that actually work, so we can actually fight those zombies off, and this person needs to be able to do the welding, know about electricity, water. I like this question. It's the best I had so far.
You want that resourceful person. Good answer.
Alrighty, last one. What is something you've always wanted to do, but you haven't had a chance to do it yet?
All right. So this sounds very superficial and stuff, but we are in a super privileged position. We are in the global north, in industrialized countries, right? We have a full fridge. I cannot think, and I don't come from a good background or too good background, but it was still very good if I compare it to other people's life in the world. So I think eventually, in a few years, I don't know, 1, 10, whatever, how many years, I think I want to help other people to do just better in life in general, I think. And maybe because construction employs so many people, it is putting food on table for many, many millions of workers in the world. And they go to the job not knowing if they come back, right? It's one of the most unsafe kind of working industries. I think it's the unsafest one, probably. Maybe oil and gas exploration or something is worse, but it's still pretty bad out there. So I think increasing somehow worker safety in industry that cannot be industrialized or automated yet, like the other 80% of the world. I think that we have to do some work there too.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, Alex, thank you again so much. For folks who might want to get in touch with you or learn more keep up with what you're doing, how can they most easily do that?
Yes, so the easiest would be to find me on LinkedIn. My name is Alex, Alex, Walzer. That's also the name I use on LinkedIn. We have a construction tech Discord. I will also send you the link where people just engage. We have conversations. We do also some kind of jam sessions like this. We post open job offers, events. I think that's also quite nice, and I usually respond within a day.
And we'll put that information in the show notes as well. And when you're looking for LinkedIn, Alex is the one with the upside down picture, which I love. It's awesome. So I have to update everyone. I think we were all successful with our challenge words that we had to work into things. Ethan, your word that you had was?
My word was lighting, and I did fit it in there. It took me a while, but I got it in there when I was talking about solar.
You did. Good job. I had the word hammer. I got rid of it really early on, so I didn't have to worry about it again. And Alex, you did a great job. You had the word.
I had radius, but I also used hammer in one of the analogies right there. Sorry for snitching.
Yeah, you got both.
I didn't know there's exclusivity to these words.
That's like an overachiever. We love that. Well, thank you again, Alex. This has been just a real pleasure, and it's going to make for a great show. So thank you so much for your time here this morning.
Hey, likewise, guys. Thanks for having me, and hope to stay connected with you guys. And thanks for the listener out there to maybe wake up and be less wrong tomorrow.
Sounds good. I love that. Great way to think about things. And thank you to our audience for tuning into this episode of Construction Disruption. Please always watch for future episodes. We always have great guests, and this episode was no exception to that. Please don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Until the next time we're together, keep on trying to be less wrong, but keep on disrupting and challenging things, make things better for the world. And don't forget to have a positive impact on the people that you encounter along the way. Be kind, do those simple things that change the lives of others in very, very powerful ways. So, God bless. Take care. This is Isaiah Industries signing off until the next episode of Construction Disruption.
This podcast is produced by Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building products.